20 minutes before the Homecoming Gala started, Chloe's designer dress zipper completely burst. Without hesitation, I swapped my perfect dress for her broken one. Clutching the fabric over my chest, I stumbled out of the backstage dressing room, wearing her ruined gown. Ethan Vance, the school golden boy I had been secretly head over heels for, and Chloe's stepbrother, suddenly took a few quick strides toward me. He draped his jacket over my shoulders. "Don't move," he murmured. Even Ryder Hayes, the star quarterback who'd spent half his life teasing me, stepped in front of me with a scowl. "Who did this to you?" I stood there, stunned. For a second, I actually thought they were finally worried about me, until I looked up. Both of their faces instantly darkened. "Why the hell are you wearing Chloe's dress?" Ryder reached out and yanked the neckline of my dress upward. "Holy crap. Since when does a nerd like you try to go for the sexy vibe?" Ryder looked me up and down with an air of dismissive amusement, unable to resist scoffing. "Are you out of your mind? Isn't this Chloe's dress? How did it end up on you? Look, if you wanted a makeover, you should at least see if you can pull it off. But honestly..." He leaned in slightly. Dragging out his words, he mocked, "You look absolutely ridiculous in this, Summer." I gripped the dress with white knuckles. If I wasn't busy holding the front of the dress together, I would have punched him right in his perfect jaw. Then, a soft chuckle came from above me. It was a very light sound, as if he had heard a mild joke and was politely laughing along just to keep the atmosphere light. But to me, that chuckle sounded like thunder. It came from Ethan, the crush I had been shamelessly chasing for 3 months. I kept my eyes glued to the floor, biting my lip so hard it hurt. I forced myself not to snap back at Ryder like I usually did. I didn't want to completely destroy what little dignity I had left in front of Ethan. But Ryder wasn't used to my silence. "Whoa, what's wrong with you today? No sassy comeback." He reached out, mockingly feeling my forehead. "No fe ver." His gaze drifted down. He looked at me with a smirk. "Stop hiding it. There's nothing to see anyway. It's not like you've got the curves for it. Did you honestly think wearing the school queen's dress would turn you into her?" I trembled with pure rage. Tears blurred my vision. All I could see was a well-sculpted hand suddenly appearing in my line of sight. I slowly looked up. It was Ethan, the boy who usually avoided me like the plague. He reached out and yanked the jacket he had just put on my shoulders right back off. I was too stunned to react. It took me a few seconds to process it. Wasn't that for me?" I whispered, looking up at him expectantly. Ethan looked down at me, seeing my rimmed, watery eyes. His Adam's apple bobbed slightly. He averted his gaze, his face turning cold and indifferent. "Give this to Chloe," he said flatly. "I don't want her catching a cold." "And..." "I get it," I interrupted. I took the jacket, feeling utterly humiliated, and ran back into the dressing room. Through the heavy curtain, I could still hear Ryder's lazy voice asking Ethan, "Hey, didn't she look hilarious in that dress? You should have seen her in middle school. Her waist was way thicker than it is now." I can't believe she actually tried to pull off the sexy look today. I didn't know what expression Ethan had on his face, but I heard his quiet, indifferent reply, "Yeah." I returned to the backstage dressing room, feeling hollow. When I walked in, I didn't do what I usually did, rushing to Chloe with a flattering smile, gushing, "Oh my god, babe, your makeup looks stunning today." Instead, I walked quietly to my seat. As usual, Chloe was surrounded by her clique of popular girls. I heard someone ask her, "Chloe, who is more obsessed with you? Your gorgeous stepbrother Ethan, or Ryder, the star quarterback?" It was a question she got asked almost every day. She always acted shy and dodged it. But after everyone left, she would usually hold my hand and whisper, "Don't listen to them, Summer. My brother looks cold, but he actually listens to everything I say. I know you like him. Don't worry, I'll help you get close to him." But this time, for some reason, I stopped in my tracks. I wanted to hear her real answer. Chloe smiled beautifully, her voice bright and sweet, dripping with playful innocence. "Oh, come on. That's such a hard question. Ethan spoils me so much, but Ryder is also so sweet. It's so hard to choose." Someone teased, "But if you had to pick just one?" I stood there, watching Chloe twirl her hair, pretending to be troubled. But they're both so good to me. Ryder is always so mean to Summer, his own childhood friend, but he's only ever gentle with me. And Ethan? Summer has been practically begging for his attention for 3 months, and he won't even look her way, but he treats me so differently. She sighed deeply, as if carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. "I can't help it. I'm his only sister, even if we aren't blood related. I don't want to make a choice and hurt either of them. As for Summer, well, let her keep running errands for me. She'll do anything just to get close to Ethan anyway." Just then, the photographer called for a group photo. Chloe shrugged at the girls, signaling them to head out. The moment her eyes met mine, she pouted slightly in annoyance. Why are you still here? You shouldn't go on stage looking like that. I was actually going to look for. I tossed Ethan's jacket onto her vanity. Looking straight ahead, I said coldly, take off my dress and give it back. She didn't notice my change in tone. Assuming I had just been rejected by Ethan again, she gave me a couple of fake, sweet consolations. I ignored her completely. She nudged my arm. Summer, I have to go to writer's game this afternoon, so I won't have time to finish my AP history research paper. The usual deal. You write it for me, and tomorrow, I'll set up a study date for you and Ethan at the library. Chloe smiled at me, confident I would agree. I stood up and said, no, I have my own things to do. Chloe bolted upright, staring at me in absolute disbelief. Ryder hasn't been bothering you lately, so forget him, but this is a private study date with Ethan. Summer, don't tell me you don't like him anymore? I thought of the fleeting warmth Ethan had shown me earlier. My chest ached terribly, but the harsh reality of today made me realize, clearer than ever, that he felt absolutely nothing for me. Yeah, I don't. With that, I walked out of the room. I spoke loud enough for her to hear. I am done chasing Ethan Vance. And as for Ryder, I don't need a single nice word from that jerk ever again. Just as I reached the exit, Ryder's mocking voice drifted over. Wow, Summer. Look at you, talking big. Why don't you go all the way and say you're unfriending me, and that you're never riding in my truck again? Great idea, I interrupted, my face blank as I looked him dead in the eye. Unfriending you sounds perfect. Before Ryder's face could transition from smug to furious, I turned and walked away. Not once did I look at Ethan, who was standing right next to him. Behind me, I heard Chloe's annoyed voice. Ethan, I've called your name 3 times. What are you staring at? On my walk home, I realized how long it had been since I had experienced such peace. Usually, I was either busy finding ways to cling to Ethan, or Ryder was driving his pickup next to me, bickering and insulting me all the way. But today, it was quiet. The entire world felt like it belonged to just me. I began to think, is it possible that my worth doesn't need to be validated by anyone else? With that thought, my steps became lighter. On my way, I fed the stray cats. I helped the sweet old lady down the street fix her garden fence. I even guided a blind woman with her service dog past a construction zone. But when I reached my front porch, Ryder was standing there waiting for me. Tonight was the night the varsity team won the state championship. Chloe had been excitedly talking about throwing a massive victory party for Ryder at the field. Yet here he was, still wearing his varsity jacket, standing outside my door. He looked at my dirty dress. He instinctively opened his mouth to make a sarcastic comment, but forced himself to swallow it. Clearing his throat, he handed me a paper bag and said awkwardly, Summer, I got you those loaded fries you love from that diner downtown. The line was insanely long. Here, eat up. The savory scent wafted through the air. Ryder put his hands in his pockets, trying to look cool, but his eyes kept darting to my face. I knew this was his version of an apology. He throws a bone. I take it, and we're good again. But I didn't want to play along anymore. Before I could say anything, my phone buzzed. It was Chloe on FaceTime. Her voice was bubbly and loud. Summer, did Ryder behave and apologize to you? I didn't answer. She continued, sounding playfully annoyed. That boy almost drove me crazy. I casually mentioned in our group chat that I wanted loaded fries, and the second the post-game interview ended, he rushed to wait in line for them. He even brought them to my house. But my parents were home, so I didn't dare go out. I told him to take them to you instead. Tell me, is his attitude sincere? If not, I'm ignoring him too. I ignored her banter and caught the main point. I looked at Ryder. Group chat? What group chat? Do the 3 of you have a separate group chat? Chloe gasped over the phone. Oh my god, sorry. My bad. Summer, don't be mad. It was Ethan's idea. It's fine, I said coldly and hung up. Before Ryder's face could pale further, I took the bag of fries and threw it right into the trash can next to the porch. Then, I slammed the front door in his face. After taking a long shower, I gathered everything related to Ethan into a large cardboard box. I walked out and threw the entire box into the trash bin. Even though I knew it was the right thing to do, my chest still throbbed with a dull ache. After a restless night, I walked out of my house the next morning, only to find Ethan standing right next to my trash bin. He was frowning, staring blankly at the garbage. I didn't know what he was thinking, and I wasn't delusional enough to think he was there for me. I decided to treat him like a stranger and walk right past him. Summer. It was the first time he had ever called my name so softly. I stopped. He spoke in his usual calm, collected voice. Chloe told me last night that you wanted to study with me at the library. She said if I didn't agree, you were going to rally the girls to isolate her. Ethan casually checked his watch, took a deep breath, and looked at me. We have time. Let's go. My body went stiff. Ethan didn't notice. He began walking ahead, talking casually. Chloe is too innocent. She sees the world too simply and doesn't have a bad bone in her body. She isn't like you. You wear your emotions on your sleeve and say whatever trash comes to your mind. So, I hope you stop trying to exclude her. And I hope this is the last time you and I have to hang out alone. I stared at his tall, straight back. It felt like waking up from a long, stupid dream. I quickly picked up my pace. Like a stranger, I walked right past him, leaving him behind. I thought to myself, my first love, on this ordinary Monday morning, is officially over. The pavement beneath my worn sneakers felt solid, grounding me in a way I hadn't felt in months. Behind me, the silence was heavy, broken only by the distant hum of morning traffic. I didn't turn around to see the expression on Ethan's face. For 3 months, I had memorized every tilt of his head, every slight shift in his posture, trying to read meaning into a boy who viewed me as nothing more than a minor, irritating satellite orbiting his perfect stepsister. I didn't need to read him anymore. When I reached the school gates, the familiar wave of Monday morning anxiety didn't hit me. Usually, my stomach would be in knots, wondering if I'd run into Ethan by the lockers, or if Ryder would corner me by the water fountain to throw some lazy, half-hearted insult that I would laugh off just to keep him talking to me. Today, the hallway just looked like a hallway. The lockers were dented and painted an ugly shade of industrial beige. The air smelled of damp raincoats and cheap body spray. Summer. I didn't stop. I knew that voice. It was Sarah, one of Chloe's loyal lieutenants. I kept walking toward my locker, twisting the dial with practiced ease. Sarah caught up to me, slightly out of breath, her eyes scanning my face with a mixture of curiosity and manufactured pity. Hey, did you see Chloe? She was looking for you. She said you forgot to give her the outline for the history project. I slid my heavy AP history textbook out of my locker and slammed the metal door shut. The loud clang made Sarah jump. I didn't forget, I said, adjusting the strap of my backpack. I'm just not doing it. Sarah's brow furrowed. What do you mean? The draft is due today. If she doesn't turn it in, Mr. Harrison is going to drop her grade to a C. You know how stressed she gets about her GPA. Then she should have written it, I said. My voice was level, devoid of the usual frantic eagerness to please that I had wore like a second skin for the past year. I looked Sarah dead in the eye. And if she's stressed, she can use some of that free time she spends at writers' practices to actually read the syllabus. Before Sarah could process the shock of my words, I turned and walked toward the history wing. The classroom was already half full when I walked in. Mr. Harrison, a tired-looking man in his late 40s who had long since given up on inspiring his students, was writing the day's assignment on the whiteboard. Usually, I sat in the back row, right next to the empty seat I always saved for Chloe. Today, I walked straight to the front row, taking a desk right under Mr. Harrison's nose. It was the nerd seat, the one everyone avoided because it meant you couldn't look at your phone during lectures. 5 minutes before the bell, the door swung open. Chloe walked in, flanked by Ryder. She looked effortlessly beautiful in a pastel pink sweater and high-waisted jeans, her blonde hair bouncing with every step. Ryder was wearing his varsity jacket, his chest puffed out slightly, though there was a distinct tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there on Friday. His eyes immediately scanned the room. When they landed on me, sitting in the very front, his footsteps faltered. Chloe didn't notice. She smiled her bright, dazzling smile and headed straight toward our usual spot in the back. When she realized I wasn't there and that her seat was empty while I sat yards away, her smile flickered. She walked down the aisle, her boots clicking against the linoleum. She stopped right beside my desk, leaning down so her perfume, something sweet and sickeningly expensive, filled my space. "Summer," she whispered, her voice tight but maintaining that sweet, sing-song quality. "What are you doing down here?" I saved our seats. "I'm sitting here today, Chloe," I said, keeping my eyes on my notebook. I was carefully drawing a margin, my hand steady. "But the project," she hissed, her innocence slipping for a fraction of a second. "Did you bring the draft? Mr. Harrison is going to start collecting them in 2 minutes." "I don't have it." "What do you mean you don't have it? You promised." "I didn't promise," I said, finally looking up at her. The sheer panic in her eyes was almost fascinating. She had spent so long relying on my desperation that she had genuinely forgotten how to function as an independent student. "I told you yesterday I wouldn't do it. I suggest you tell Mr. Harrison you need an extension. Though, considering you've used 3 already, I doubt he'll give it to you." "Summer, please," she pleaded, her eyes instantly welling with tears. It was her best trick. The helpless, fragile girl who just needed a little help. "Ethan will be so disappointed if my grades drop. You know how hard he works to keep our parents happy. He's going to think I'm failing because I'm lazy." It was a clever hook. In the past, the mere mention of Ethan's disappointment would have had me handing over my own paper with her name scribbled on top. I looked at her tear-rimmed eyes and felt absolutely nothing. No flutter in my chest.
No panique.
Just a deep, profound sense of boredom. That sounds like a personal problem, Chloe, I said. The bell rang, sharp and shrill. Miss Vance, Miss Montgomery, please take your seats. Mr. Harrison droned from the front. Chloe stood frozen for a moment, her face pale, before she practically fled to the back of the classroom. From the corner of my eye, I saw Ryder watching the entire exchange. He was sitting 2 rows back, his jaw clenched, his eyes boring into the side of my face. I didn't look at him. I opened my notebook to a fresh page and wrote the date at the top. For the next 3 days, my life underwent a quiet, radical transformation. I stopped eating lunch in the courtyard where the popular crowd gathered. Instead, I took my sandwich to the old oak tree near the soccer fields, or sat in the library where the only sound was the hum of the fluorescent lights and the turning of pages. It turned out that when you weren't constantly scanning a crowd for a boy who didn't want to see you, or bracing yourself for insult from a boy who couldn't stop looking at you, the school day went by incredibly fast. My mind felt lighter. I actually listened to the teachers. I participated in class. But high school ecosystems do not tolerate a change in gravity easily. On Thursday afternoon, I was in the library, packing up my things after a study session. The library was nearly empty, the librarian having gone to the office to make copies. The heavy wooden door creaked open. I didn't look up, assuming it was another student, until a shadow fell over my table. Summer. I paused, my hand hovering over my pencil case. It was Ryder. He had his hands shoved deep into his varsity jacket pockets. He looked tired. The dark circles under his eyes were prominent, and he lacked his usual swagger. He didn't look like the star quarterback who had just won a state championship. He looked like a boy who had spent 3 days sleeping poorly. "What do you want, Ryder?" I asked, keeping my voice flat as I zipped up my backpack. He pulled a chair out, the legs scraping loudly against the floor, and sat down opposite me. He leaned forward, his eyes searching my face with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "You're seriously doing this?" he asked, his voice low, almost raw. "You're seriously not talking to me?" "I told you on Monday," I said, slinging my backpack over one shoulder. "I'm done." "Because of some stupid fries?" He scoffed, though the arrogance in his voice felt hollow, like a script he was forcing himself to read. "Come on, I was trying to do something nice." I waited in that line for 45 minutes. Do you know how many people wanted to talk to me after the game? I blew them all off to go to that diner. "You went to that diner for Chloe." I corrected him, my voice devoid of anger. That was the thing Ryder didn't understand. Anger required energy. It required caring. "You only brought them to me because her parents were home, and she couldn't sneak out. I was your second choice. Your consolation prize. Your trash can for unwanted food." Ryder's jaw worked. "That's not how it was." "It is exactly how it was. It's how it's always been." I stood up, but he reached out, his hand wrapping around my wrist. His grip wasn't tight, but it was firm. His hand was warm, calloused from football laces. "Let go," I said, looking down at his hand. "No," he said, his voice dropping an octave.
"Not until you look at me."
"Really look at me, Summer." I looked at him. I looked at the sharp line of his jaw, the messy brown hair he never bothered to style, the amber eyes that used to make my stomach flip when we were kids playing in the mud. "You think I don't care about you?" he muttered, his grip tightening just a fraction, not to hurt, but to keep me from slipping away. "I've known you since we were 6 years old. I lived next door to you. I know you hate tomatoes but love tomato soup. I know you cry during those stupid insurance commercials. You think I'm just some jerk who uses you?" "Yes," I said simply. "Because that's who you chose to be. You decided that being the popular quarterback meant you had to treat your childhood friend like dirt to keep up appearances. You laughed when your friends called me a nerd. You mocked my clothes. You sat there on Monday and told Ethan how hilarious I looked in Chloe's broken dress." Ryder's face paled. The amber in his eyes seemed to dim.
I was just joking around."
"Ethan was." "I don't care about Ethan," I interrupted. And for the first time, it was the absolute truth. "But I cared about you. Or, at least, I cared about the boy who used to build fortresses out of cardboard boxes with me in the backyard. But that boy is gone, Ryder. You killed him off a long time ago." I pulled my wrist back. This time, he let go. His hand fell to the table, limp. "Don't come to my house anymore," I said, standing tall. "Don't buy me fries. Don't look for me in the hallways. We're done." I walked out of the library, the heavy oak doors swinging shut behind me. I didn't look back, but I could feel his eyes on my spine, heavy and suffocating. The real storm hit on Friday. The midterm grades for AP History were posted on the bulletin board outside the main office. A small crowd had gathered around it, whispering and pointing. I didn't care about my grade. I knew I had an A, but as I walked past, I heard Chloe's voice, sharp and frantic, rising above the chatter. "There has to be a mistake. Mr. Harrison, please." I paused, looking over the heads of the sophomore girls. Chloe was standing in front of Mr. Harrison, who was holding a clipboard, looking thoroughly unimpressed. Her face was flushed, her perfect makeup ruined by the tears spilling down her cheeks. I turned in the draft. I worked so hard on it, she sobbed, her voice carrying down the hallway. Miss Vance, Mr. Harrison said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. The draft you turned in was plagiarized word for word from an online database. Not only that, but the writing style is completely different from the essays you've submitted earlier this term. In fact, those earlier essays matched the writing style of another student in this class. The hallway went dead silent. Dozens of eyes slowly turned toward me. Chloe looked up, her gaze locking onto mine. The mask of sweet, helpless innocence was entirely gone. In its place was a raw, ugly desperation. It was summer, she shrieked, pointing a manicured finger at me. She wrote them. She forced me to take them. She wanted to sabotage me, because she's jealous of me. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. I stood my ground, my hands slid casually into my pockets. I didn't flinch. I didn't look around for support. I just looked at Chloe, feeling a strange, detached pity. Miss Montgomery, Mr. Harrison said, turning his tired gaze to me. Is this true? Did you write Miss Vance's essays? No, Mr. Harrison, I said, my voice clear and steady. I didn't write them. I did, however, tutor her during the first few weeks of the semester. But when she asked me to write her midterm draft last weekend, I refused. I told her I wouldn't do her work anymore. She's lying, Chloe screamed, stepping toward me. She's a liar. She's been trying to ruin my life. She's obsessed with my brother. Chloe, stop. The voice was quiet, but it carried an authority that made everyone freeze. Ethan stepped out from the crowd. He was wearing a simple black sweater, his expression illegible, his dark eyes fixed on his stepsister. He looked at her flushed, hysterical face, and then he looked at me. I met his gaze, my eyes cool and indifferent. Ethan, Chloe gasped, rushing to him and grabbing his arm. Tell them how she's been bullying me. She's been trying to isolate me from everyone. She's the one who made me fail. Ethan didn't hug her. He didn't pat her back. He slowly, deliberately reached down and untangled her fingers from his sleeve. I saw your search history on the family computer, Chloe, Ethan said. His voice was very quiet, but in the silent hallway, it sounded like a gavel falling. You were looking up essay databases on Sunday night. The night after Summer told you she wouldn't do your work. Chloe froze. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. And, Ethan continued, his voice tight, the girls in your clique told me yesterday that you weren't being isolated. You told them to ignore Summer because she was creepy. You lied to me. The crowd began to whisper, the tide of opinion shifting instantly. The golden girl of the school was crumbling right in front of them, her lies laid bare by her own stepbrother. Ethan. Chloe whispered, her face draining of all color. How could you say that? I'm your sister. You lied to me, Ethan repeated, his voice flat. You used me to get back at her because she stopped doing your homework. He turned away from her, leaving her standing there in the middle of the hallway, exposed and utterly alone. He walked toward me. The crowd parted for him, expecting some grand gesture, some dramatic apology. He stopped a foot away from me, his tall frame casting a shadow over my face. His eyes were dark, swirling with emotions I couldn't quite decipher, but for the first time in 3 months, he was really looking at me. Not as Chloe's shadow, not as a nuisance, but as me. Summer, he said, his voice thick.
I'm sorry.
I was wrong about you. He reached out, his hand hovering near my shoulder, as if he wanted to put his jacket on me again. This time, for real. I looked at his hand. I looked at his perfect face, the boy who had occupied every corner of my diary, every teenage dream I'd had for the last 90 days. I took a half step back, just enough to make his hand drop back to his side. I know you were, I said. My voice was polite. It was the voice you used with a stranger who had accidentally bumped into you on the subway. But it doesn't matter anymore. I looked past him, to the exit of the hallway where the bright afternoon sun was streaming through the glass doors. Mr. Harrison, I said, turning to the teacher. If you need me to sign any academic integrity forms, I'll be in the library. But I didn't write her draft. No need, Miss Montgomery, Mr. Harrison said, looking slightly embarrassed. You're cleared. Go on. Thank you. I adjusted my backpack, turned my back on Ethan, on Chloe, on the whispers of the crowd, and walked toward the light. 6 months later. The air was crisp and cool, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and impending rain. It was the first week of October, and the school was gearing up for another homecoming gala. I was sitting on the steps of the local library, a hot cup of tea between my hands, watching the yellow leaves drift down onto the pavement. A lot had changed. Chloe's parents had transferred her to a private school 3 towns over after the plagiarism scandal and the sudden drop in her social standing. Without her court of admirers, She couldn't handle the daily reality of being just another student. Ryder's varsity team was having a mediocre season. I heard he had gotten into a fight with another player in the locker room, and his grades had slipped so low he was on academic probation. Every now and then, I'd see his black truck parked down the street from my house, the headlights off, just sitting there in the dark. I never went out. Eventually, he'd drive away, the engine roaring in the quiet night. And Ethan? Ethan had tried. He had left books in my locker with notes tucked inside. He had stood outside my classrooms, waiting to walk me to my next period. He had even shown up at my house once, standing on the porch in the rain, looking at me with those intense, dark eyes, begging for just 5 minutes to explain. I had given him his 5 minutes. And during those 5 minutes, I realized that the boy I had loved wasn't Ethan Vance. The boy I had loved was a fantasy I had built in my own head to cope with the loneliness of being Chloe's shadow. The real Ethan was just a boy, flawed, easily manipulated, and proud. When he finished speaking, I had smiled, thanked him for his apology, and closed the door. He didn't come back after that. He had his pride, and I had my peace. Hey. I looked up. A boy with messy black hair and wire-rimmed glasses was walking up the library steps, 2 large textbooks tucked under his arm. He was wearing an oversized green sweater with holes in the elbows, and he had a smudge of ink on his jaw. It was Leo. He was the captain of the debate team and my partner for the regional AP history presentation. "Did you finish the slide deck?" he asked, sitting down on the step beside me and offering me a chocolate chip cookie from a paper bag. "Of course I did," I said, taking the cookie. "I'm not a slacker." "Good, because if we lose to West High, I'm going to have to listen to my dad talk about his glory days as a debater for the next 3 months, and my mental health cannot handle that." I laughed, a real, loud sound that echoed in the cool air. As we sat there, talking about history, about college applications, about the stray cats we both fed on the weekends, I felt a deep, profound sense of contentment. My worth didn't belong to a golden boy who only saw me when his stepsister's lies crumbled. My worth didn't belong to a quarterback who used insults as a shield for his own cowardice. My worth belonged to me. And as I looked out at the ordinary, beautiful world, I knew that the girl who had cried over a ruined dress backstage was gone forever. In her place was someone who didn't need to be saved. I had saved myself.